Welcome back to another episode. Today's episode is a bit different from my usual episodes because today I have interviewed two exceptional and brilliant women about the experience of being raised by a narcissist. I find the conversation about mental health online is really basic and rudimentary, and I think the best way to learn about mental health is to learn about the experience of mental illness and not just talk about mental illness as this like nebulous intellectual concept. So I have interviewed two exceptional women. They are really so fascinating, so brilliant, so insightful, and so thoughtful. And they are also on two polar opposite ends of the world. And I did that intentionally because I really wanted to show the complexity of mental illness and how it intersects with race, with class, with culture, with religion, and with all types of contexts. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. I will say the conversations were very honest. We did not sugarcoat anything. So if this is too much of a sensitive topic for you, I understand, and don't listen. Like, protect yourself, babes. But otherwise, I think you'll find these two conversations very interesting, very insightful, and I know that I've learned so much about not only narcissism, but just the effects of abusive childhoods and how we can heal, learn, and grow from them. So that being said, we're going to start off with Rebecca, and she's going to tell us about her experience of being raised by two narcissistic parents and how she's learned to overcome and heal and ultimately be the celestial being that she is today. Rebecca, thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited for this interview. I feel like I have so many questions. I'm so excited to learn. There's so much to learn. Before we dive into it, do you think you want to just give a little background info on yourself, where you're from, and what you've been up to, all that good stuff?
Sure. So my name is Becca Berry. I met you at USC, so that's one part of my one part of my story. But I'm from Long Beach. I grew up with two parents who were very, very, very deep in the church. My father is a pastor. My mom is a teacher, but in the church is considered a first lady, and so both of them were very high up, and I myself was deep into it as well, and just grew up feeling like this was how it is. And we can talk about this later, but it took me not till, I guess, college to really start looking inside and questioning just why do I believe what I believe? And does this actually align with me anymore? And so, I've had a kind of a long journey of figuring that out, but I've always basically known that I've wanted to help people. I've known that whatever my gifts are, and back then it was spiritual gifts that I got from God. I knew I wanted to use that, to help people. So, I was into music. I did gospel choir all my entire life. I directed the gospel choir at USC. And then I used my other, talents, things that I enjoyed, writing, reading, to dig really deep into sociology and the law. And so now I'm working in the Bay as an attorney. I do reentry law, which is basically folks who are incarcerated or have a criminal record. They come to me for legal advice and support on how to reenter society. And basically, there's a lot of barriers around that, and folks perceive you in a certain way. And so I'm always helping folks navigate that, navigate those perceptions. So it's been an interesting journey. I'm here now though, and happy to talk about what I've experienced and encountered throughout this whole
absolutely time. I mean, so for anyone who doesn't know, this conversation is about narcissism. I did a call or I guess a casting call, whatever you would call that, on my Instagram stories, because recently I've just been really interested in not just mental health, but narcissism. And I'm realizing that it's actually a lot more common than we all think. And I think it's so common that it's actually a pandemic. Like, it is really a global health crisis. And I'm genuinely, the more I learn about narcissism, the more I'm just surprised that it's just still a taboo topic when it's literally so common. So this conversation specifically is about being raised by narcissists. At what point do you think that you realize that one of your parents or both of them are narcissists? Like, were there signs when you were growing up, or is this something you only learned in retrospect, like once you left the house?
I think, honestly, I'm because I'm tapping a lot more into my inner child self and like really have been reflecting a lot on my childhood for the last like 3-4 years. I feel like I definitely noticed it right away.
Really?
And it was like,
wait, how old is right away?
Right away is like probably as soon as I could like articulate words and just like interact with my parents and ask for things, and the way I was responded to, the way I was kind of shut down, whenever my views or even just like thoughts about life were different than theirs, to me is a huge sign of narcissism, or what I call now just like having a false self, like just not being connected to who you really are. And so you've created this false self that you live through and are very, very protective of it. And if anyone tries to break through that, like the consequences are really dire. Like you'll get lashed out at or cut off. Like there's a lot of like, the reaction to it is really strong. So I think I knew pretty early on. And then as I got older and like finally got to break free of my parents, and that's another thing that narcissistic parents do, is like they infantilize you in a way where they
really?
don't want you to grow up. They don't want you to go away. Like they don't want you they don't want to leave that control. And so for me, that was really hard when I didn't realize what was going on, because it was like, well, why don't my parents want me to learn how to drive? Like, why don't my parents want me, like, to have this certain group of friends? Like, why are they so judgmental about that? And it's just like all of those things were reactions or reflections of their own needs or their own unmet needs that they wanted, me to fulfill.
Wow. How does that look like? Like, are there specific things that they would say to you? Like, would it be blatantly like, no, I don't want you to learn how to drive? Or how does that manifest?
Yeah, see, and it's so funny because it like, it's repeated so much to you that at some point for me, if it turned, I thought it was my own thoughts. Like they would be like, oh yeah, no, you don't need to, learn how to drive. Like I'll drive you to that party, or, I'll pick you up from that. And it's just a really like taking away your agency and your independence and need for that. Exactly. To the point where I was like, oh yeah, I guess I don't need to drive. Like, I guess I don't have places to go. And so that can really hold you back for sure.
When did you start doing you'd mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that over the past 3 years, you've been sort of reconnecting with your child self. What prompted that? And what have you learned about your child self versus who you are right now? Like, is there a dissonance?
Yeah. So it happened again once I really moved away from my family. So my family's in Long Beach. I grew up in LA, went to USC for undergrad and law school. So I was never super far away or disconnected, and I wasn't driving. So I still did depend on them for a lot. And so something in me led me after law school to like go as far as I could possibly think. And that was DC. I was like, I'm gonna live on the other side of the country. Yeah. And I don't have any family out there. I barely have
How did they take that?
Oh, they didn't take it well at all.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. My dad had his biggest, like, and what like psychologists and stuff call narcissistic rage. Like, he had his biggest blow up at me the night I had graduated from law school. So it was supposed to be like a celebratory thing for me, and that's when it like just came out, like God isn't going to bless anything you do, and I can't believe that you're going to DC, and why, like, are you saying this to the family? And it was a huge, like, I don't know, the way he did that for me, I was like, okay, this is just confirmation, one, that this move was a good idea. And two, like, I don't even know who this person is. Like, I remember looking in his eyes and just seeing nothing, like, just really saying, like, blank. I didn't feel love. I didn't feel like, no like soul connection there. It just felt like, very disconnected. So I at the time, it was really, really painful, but I knew it was what I needed to do. Yeah.
Wow. Growing up, did you feel like that your parents loved you?
Ooh. I felt like my parents loved me if I did XYZ. Like, I very much felt like it was conditional, and whether I was consciously aware of that or unconsciously aware of it, like, the way I moved, the way I acted, my like compulsive need to be a perfect student and a perfect child, all of that showed that I knew, or at least felt deep down, that like their love
was conditional.
Is absolutely, it would be taken away if I wasn't the perfect child. And then you add Christianity on top of that, and your dad being a pastor telling you, like, you know, when you're bad or when you're not doing what I tell you to do, not only are you disappointing me, but you're disappointing God, and that's sinful. Wow. And, you know, you need to go ask for forgiveness, and, you know, you're so dirty inside, and it's just like having that like pressure and just
shame.
Shame. And I think that is at the core of narcissism, is shame, is like their own shame, their own like disconnection from their child self, their true self, that was shamed by someone else, and then going through life projecting that onto other people, and like having to make other people feel just as shamed so that they can feel a little better. And it's like it's a sad like place to be, but it's honestly all I know, and I see it everywhere, and I saw it in myself, and I've been like systematically, again, like for the last 3-4 years, trying to kill that because it's not the move. So moving to DC, that was it. Moving to DC, I got a therapist out there, a beautiful Black queer therapist who met me where I was. Yeah, it is. Truly. I had to connect with her, and my going to her was like hard, because for the last, like, even before that, I knew, like, I should probably go to therapy. Like, I should definitely talk to someone who's not a pastor, like, who's not gonna, like, shout the Bible at me, just someone who, like, will meet me where I am. And so I had tried and failed to do that for so long. And part of me feels like now it's because I was supposed to meet, you know, this therapist in DC. But she's the one who, just from, like, making me do a timeline kind of my life and my memories, and just that's what connected the dots for me, and recognizing, like, oh, okay, like I felt unheard, and I felt like unseen, just like really seen for who I am for as long as I can remember.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, I've been doing some research on narcissism, and one of the things that I found is that narcissistic parents, their love is always conditional, like you said. And something I find interesting about your story is, like, growing up in the church. And at some point I didn't grow up religious, but at some point I went to a very, very Christian school. And I find that like conditional love is sort of like the foundation of Christian love. Do you feel like, yeah, do you feel like when you look back at your childhood, do you feel like Christianity sort of, or your Christian beliefs or Christian upbringing sort of exacerbated or justified or encouraged a lot of this narcissistic toxic behavior? Like, did you ever feel like, well, if God's love is conditional, then of course my parents' love must be conditional? Or like, if God is judging me, then of course my parents should be judged. Like, did you ever draw those parallels? Or
Yeah, I did. And I honestly did, again, once I was in DC and away from it and away from the like obligation to go to church and the obligation to be a part of a Christian community, I was starting to pull those parallels. And once I realized that like, oh shit, like God, at least the God of the Bible, makes you feel like shit, shames you, tells you that you're born evil, born sinful, and you're not worthy of like his love unless you like do certain things and act a certain way. And it's like, yeah, like God is kind of a narcissist. So no wonder I wasn't feeling it there or from my family. Like that makes a lot of sense. And that was like, okay, I definitely need to let this go. But that's hard. That's been really hard.
Thank you for listening to the first half of this conversation. If you're interested in listening to the rest of this conversation, you will find it on Patreon. So please support my Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/bobosvoid, or you can just click on the link in the description box below. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'll be having so many more of these types of conversation with different friends, with different strangers, with all types of interesting people, and sometimes just conversing with myself. If you are interested in philosophy, politics, race, all the things, I'll be hosting all the conversations on my Patreon. So patreon.com/bobosvoid, or just click on the description box below and support me. Thank you.